What does it mean to be in relationship with a horse? What a horse needs? What do I need? Truly understanding the essence of the existence of two creatures and how you can be together in an amazing way.
Josh Nichol is an internationally recognized trainer and horseman whose clinics sell out over a year in advance. His foundational approach to horsemanship and horse-human relationships has been termed revolutionary and groundbreaking. And Josh's approach to horses has been stirring up a lot of buzz since 2021. Josh is both a thought leader and motivational mind in the horse world, and when he's not speaking and clinicking all over the world, him and his family are training horses, working cattle in Alberta, and competing on the Canadian rodeo circuit.
Dear Horse World, it's Josh Nichol.
All right, Josh, welcome to the Dear Horse World podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Full disclosure, everybody, I have been super nervous about this episode because Josh's work has completely changany my life. Not dramatic at all.
The big lead.
Yeah, it's like if any of you listening have ever felt like there's something missing in your horsemanship, in your practice, in the way that you show up for your horses every day, I felt that way. And then I met Josh and I went to a clinic of his last year in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island. And it was like that moment of being like, oh, this is what's been missing. Like, this is what's been missing for me. And so when I decided I was going to do this podcast, I knew who was going to be episode 1. Like, I knew before I'd even decided who the rest of the guests were. I knew that you were going to be episode 1 because I feel like you're ground zero to so much of what the company is doing. And so I'm like excited to share everything that I've learned from you, and also like for you to share with our listeners, like just who you are and how groundbreaking some of what you're doing is.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's been fun to watch and to be a part of your journey, to see the heart that you have for horses and for horsemanship, and, to see how this is blended into your journey with Lady and the heart that you had for her and have for her, to see how you've been called to her and to what you're doing, and then to see how I kind of fit into that it's just been really fun to add my piece to that puzzle for you, and then to watch you and Lady kind of unfold has been pretty beautiful.
Yeah. So I want to go back to last year when we first met, and I want to just give some backstory to everybody. So I had never heard of Josh Nichol before, and I have a rescue Appaloosa mare named Lady, who is like my muse and my inspiration for so much of what Noëlle Floyd and NF Plus is doing right now. She is a horse that's been misunderstood a lot of her life. Definitely cowboyed. Definitely, people have tried to break her because she has a very strong character, and she's that really big mare like energy. And so when I got her, nothing that was traditional was going to work. And I remember a friend of mine, Hannah, she said, have you ever heard of relational horsemanship? And so I think before we even dive into the first clinic, because I do want to kind of go back there because it's such a cool story. When I heard relational horsemanship, I was kind of curious as to what your definition of relational horsemanship is.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I find sometimes it can be coined as, just cuddling and snuggling, but the idea of it is what does it genuinely mean to be in relationship with things? What does it mean to be in relationship with a horse? To be in relationship with speed, to be in relationship with bits, to be in relationship with the aids, what a horse needs, what do I need? So we can kind of dive deeper into the essence of connection. Relationship is about being together and doing hard things, but truly understanding the essence of the existence of two creatures and how you can be together in an amazing way. So that's kind of the balance for me in my work, is to understand what a horse needs, to understand how their bodies move in their most beautiful form, but in their own beauty, not kind of contained or held. And then what does it mean to develop our relationship with resilience and empowerment so that we can do hard things together, but it's not a matter of dominance. And that can sometimes be an interesting journey because it's always easy for us as humans to fall back to force. That's just, we are the top tier predator, and it's easy for us just to kind of force our way through things and make things happen. And then we are dealing with a horse who is a prey animal. So that relationship can become very one-sided if we're not careful. And my goal is that it is just to understand what it means to be in true relationship with the horses, with this beautiful balance of taking care of what they need, but then also inspiring them to be confident to go ahead and do hard things with us. And that takes understanding relationship. So it ends up coming back down to meeting a horse's needs. So you're kind of taking care of why they were scared and satisfying that for them, so then they can develop a confidence to take care of what we need. So you're kind of, and in the end, you work together to kind of be in communication and kind of this synergistic flow between taking care of what they need so they can take care of what you need. So it doesn't have to be dominance. Generally, when we have to force our way through something, it's because there was something that we didn't meet or couldn't communicate to with our horse. Therefore, we had to just push our hand. And the goal in this is to try to understand enough of what a horse needs and be in communication with that they feel connected and safe and brave and confident to live life with us.
When I think about my life with horses, it's like you're constantly thinking about what your goals are, but you're not having necessarily always a lot of conversation with like, hey, well, we want to do this. We want to move up to meter 20, or we want to, enter the juniors, or we want to go do, we want to get top 10 in barrels, or like there's not a conversation. So it's really cool, this idea that if we meet the horse's needs, that there's like space that opens up to then have like a deeper conversation. And that's what I've experienced with your work, is I didn't know how to have a conversation with Lady because she wasn't open to having a conversation. Right. She was like, I know exactly who you are and what you want from me, and I'm not interested. And I remember sending a video to Chelsea Kennedy, one of our masterclass instructors, and she was like, you got to make a lot of deposits in that relationship bank because she's just completely apathetic to humans. So like, go back to this clinic that I just happened to get. You had someone drop out.
Well, we started connecting
on
a
social.
day before that spot opened, which was also
super
cool.
Like really, like very much fate. I feel like that was all very fated. And we started talking, and then a spot opened up, and I was like, and I remember thinking, I'm really nervous because I'm going to have to get myself from Squamish to Nanaimo on the ferry with a mare who doesn't particularly like to trailer. And I was going to have to trailer in every day for that. And it was such an edge for me. Like that was such an edge for me to take the ferry over and to do that clinic with you. But I'm so glad I did, because within the first 5 minutes, it was unbelievable the way that you could see how she was trying to have a conversation. So I would love for you to maybe share a little bit about that with our listeners.
Working with a horse and observing the horse's behavior and what the horse is doing in a way where we see what they're doing as behavior, as disobedience, or as disrespect would be similar to picking a partner and saying you have the agenda of having kids and having all of this stuff, and you're just fitting this person into your plans, and you're just pushing your way through so you can get the things that you want. Really not even at the consideration, really, of this person, but it's like they're your vehicle to kind of achieve these things.
Wow.
Right. So then we just get a horse and we want to do these things. And then when they decide they're having a hard time with it, we call it disobedience. It's kind of deep, that we would consider that us trying to plow our way through this being's life to get what we want is then, if they have an opinion, it's disobedience. So most of the epic life-changing horses are horses like Lady, who say, I'm not cool with that. I'm not going to just have you push through me to get what you want. And often they're looked at as really bad horses, disrespectful, disobedient. And that comes down to our interpretation again. It's just like when a horse does something, how you interpret it moves your energy, dictates your pressure, and changes the dynamic of your conversation. Now, even the most opinionated horses are are really reaching for communication. They're reaching for conversation. So when you came in the round pen with Lady, the very first thing, you came in and you were talking, and the very first thing I observed for her is that she was just trying to reach into your space. And space is a funny conversation because most of the time people look at space, again, like it's disrespectful.
Yeah.
Versus engaging space.
And she had been labeled that. She had been labeled a disrespectful, pushy mare
Yeah.
that will push into your space and
Yeah.
move you around.
Mm-hmm. And what I observed in Lady was that she was craving communication. She was searching for it. And we have to remember that horses can't talk to us. They don't have voices to say, I'm struggling. I'm needing help. I need guidance. I'm feeling insecure. They just have to kind of express it with their senses and with their body language. So if we can transform our perspective on space and recognize that horses are reaching for communication, and just for a moment, just try to move away from believing that a horse is being disrespectful, because that is easy for us just to lump them in. So then when Lady walked in and you walked in with Lady, she was immediately leaning her shoulder in towards you.
Yeah.
And the energy that I got from that is that she just so deeply wanted to communicate with you. She wanted to talk, and she had stuff going on in her shoulders that she needed to communicate with you.
Yeah.
And the cool part of that is that all of a sudden it changes the narrative in your head. It changes from you're being rude to, okay, what's going on here? How can I be in communication with you? And so space becomes this beautiful spatial space becomes a form of communication with horses, where you can actually become in dialogue with what's going on inside them. And we still deal with space and we talk with space, but we need to create what I call receiving state. And that's the idea that a horse will receive your energy, but you communicate with them where they're in need, and they will always be sharing that. And a horse like Lady, she's showing up really loudly to share what she needs, where most horses have a buffer where you can kind of make them do what you want. Like you can kind of push them around and they'll kind of give in because they're really amicable creatures. They have such grace. Where you have horses like Lady who say, I'm not going to be forced around. If you don't communicate with me, I'm done. We're not doing this. And those are the epic horses that change our journey, because they stop allowing us to live inside of maybe mindsets that are a little more dominance based, and they elevate our capacity to understand them. And I feel like that was what I felt from Lady right away. She's like, this, and I really didn't know too much about your journey at that point and what you were doing on this trip. And, we were just, I just met you.
Yeah.
But I could feel right away that Lady was like, we're up in this game. Like this game is getting upped, and I'm going to help be a part of that, and I didn't, again, I realized that for your life, but not necessarily for all this other stuff you're up to.
Well, and it's funny because I think you said to me, you were like, yeah, I wasn't really, you said when I saw on the list that you were coming to the clinic, I wasn't really expecting you to show up with a rescue Appaloosa.
That's the truth. Yeah, exactly. Well, we had just met, and I thought, I didn't really, all I knew was the brand of how professional you've built your brand. And so then your brain creates assumptions around who that might be and what might show up. Yeah. And so when you guys showed up with a rescue Appaloosa, I thought, all right, this is cool, because it just shared a little different edge to what I was expecting. So
totally.
Yeah, it was fun.
When you say energy, when you say that Lady wanted to have a conversation about what existed in her shoulders, I think it's a really cool opportunity to talk about that there's a fundamental basis to your work that talks about what Lady was asking for when she was moving into me and talking, basically saying like, I want to talk about my shoulders. Yeah. And now we know so much about where she holds tension. I think it'd be really helpful for you to maybe explain what you mean by that.
I'll do my best to summarize.
Yeah.
I feel like there's two elements. The first element is understanding that a horse packs their story, whatever's gone on with them, and humans do the same thing, is that whatever happens to us, it gets packed in our bodies. A lot of times it's tension, and sometimes it can get packed in a lot of different places, but mostly with horses, it's tension. So if they have had bad experiences, it will store as anxiety, and then it goes into the muscles as tension. And the memory is stored in the muscles, which is crazy. So then when a horse is triggered, it triggers through almost subconscious reactions, which is why horses will move in inverted states, and something will happen and right away they're tense because it's triggering the memory. And that's how all of us have learned to survive, is that our bodies take what has happened to us in the past, and we're trying to use that to become wise today, to save ourselves today.
The survival state.
Right. So nothing is going to get me that I had a hard time with yesterday. So, right. So the way horses work is that relationally, those impacts are stored in the muscles, and then the muscles are ready to save themselves. So if they worry or they get scared, they're ready to react and protect themselves. Now, every horse will actually store those tensions in different parts of their body.
Right.
Some horses
Same
in
with
their
people,
hindquarters.
right?
Yep.
Because like, if you go and get a massage
That's right.
or even someone will look at your posture, they'll say you're holding tension in your
Mhm.
shoulders or you're crouching
Mhm.
over. So you're saying that horses do the same thing.
It's exactly the same. We don't realize if we feel like we need a massage, we genuinely need to reevaluate how we've processed our week, not necessarily just get a massage, because that's the second effect. It is good to get a massage, but if you don't change the way you're handling what's going on in your life,
Yes.
that energy is still transforming into tension. Now, horses are way more pure in this. We have the capacity to rationalize and recognize we need to go for a walk and talk it out with our friend or whatever, where horses are just living inside of the feelings, which makes them very pure. And that can be excellent when we're having a hard day and our horse is standing in the pasture relaxed and we just go stand by them and we feel better because their heart resonance, their energy, they give off so much more energy than we do. Their heart is so much bigger and there's just so much more frequency there. So when a horse is carrying tension, this is an anxiety frequency. It's kind of more of a fear-based frequency, which gives off a different feeling.
Yeah.
When a horse is in a positive, relaxed state, it gives off a different energy. And we would know this based on some people we feel so comfortable with, and other people just make the hair on the back of our neck stand up, and we don't really know why. Some people we just don't resonate with. We just don't click. And other people, it's like we just want to be around them. That's all we can think about.
Yeah,
So
it's so true.
we call it chemistry, we call it connection, all of these things. But just based on our body energies, we have a frequency that we give off that sometimes attracts people and sometimes doesn't. The more trauma we've had, this actually shrinks our space, our influence of energy, because we go into a protection mode. Horses desire connection, and this is why a lot of horses, lady for example, need to get so close to us or will even nip because they want to be in communication with your energy.
Yes.
But if they feel that you've shrunk and have disappeared, they almost want to awaken you.
Yes.
So they will reach in, and so then, as crazy as it seems, when a horse nips or reaches like that, it shouldn't just alert us to saying behavior. It should alert us almost to saying, oh my goodness, have I disengaged from this conversation?
Yes.
Have I just totally lost myself? So again, I'm not encouraging nipping, but I'm saying we have to recognize actually what the horse is communicating to, and we have to re-engage to our space.
Yeah.
So we feel space when we're standing too close to someone, or when someone walks up and gets too close to us.
Yeah.
When we're walking down a hallway and someone's really marching and we just veer off to the side. We are influenced and we actually are involved in energetic interactions all the time, but it's almost subconscious.
Especially like if you live in a big city in an urban area,
right.
You're actually interacting with like hundreds of people a day
all the
energetically.
Time. That's right. Sometimes why you go into a city or you go into a mall and you're very tired at the end of it because you're interacting so much. Your body energies are interacting, and subconsciously and self-preservingly, your body is scanning and protecting itself and looking at things and making judgments, and it's all subconscious though. For horses, it's not subconscious. It's not subconscious. They are sense-based creatures. When they are standing on a hill and they see movement on the other side of the hill and they see maybe a dog or let's say a wolf coming over the hill, they have to very quickly analyze the feeling that it's giving off for their own self-preservation. Is it coming to that dugout to have a drink?
Yeah.
Is it starting to stalk? Is it seeing them and changing its energy?
Yeah. Is it predatory? Is it
That's
passive?
Right. Totally.
Is it, non-conflict?
Right. So they're existing in that all the time. Okay. And then you take humans who genuinely, because of our trauma and because we don't really want to be read, we don't want people to know what we're thinking, our energy totally shrinks. Well, now you have a horse like Lady who's like, because Lady, right away I had a sense that Lady really liked you. She really liked you. So therefore she wanted to communicate with you. So then when I walked in the pen, you were just being yourself, but you were not in an expanded form. And partly you walk into a clinic, you don't really know who I am. There's people watching, there's all these things. Your energy was kind of small around your body. So right away she came in and she could feel me, and then she could feel you. And that's when she just leaned that shoulder in. And the cool part about horses is if they pack, well, this is my premise, is that they pack their tension in their body somewhere. They want to talk about it because they do not want to live in tension, anxious states. They want to be free from them. This is the reason why horses run away, regulate, and go back to eating. And then run away, regulate, and go back to eating because they desire calm spaces. Well, our goal is to get to a place where we will allow ourselves to read the horse's interaction with us. And so then Lady was asking for communication. She said, I have something going on my shoulder and we need to talk. And because your bubble was small at first,
absolutely.
she had to get right into you with that shoulder. And partly my energy invites the conversation because I actually want the horses to talk to me about it. So instead of seeing it as behavior, I see it as, please inform me of what's going on for you. Help me understand you. And as soon as you change that narrative, now when that shoulder came in, now we could expand my energy and we could have a conversation. So now the question is, when you feel that, what do? Do you just let the horse walk all over you? No, that's not what I'm saying. You have to get to a place where your horse is willing to receive your energy. So that's when right away what I did is I felt Lady is very tactile. She actually likes contact. She likes the engagement of it.
Yeah.
So I actually put my hand right on her shoulder.
Yeah.
And I just sat there with her and felt, but I stayed there in kind of a strong presence.
Yeah.
Where I was reaching towards her and letting her feel. Because what you need to do with a horse is that you have to be really upfront with your heart. You have to let them feel you. You have to reach your energy out there, almost as if you're trying to be really upfront with your intentions. Like, I want you to know what my heart is for you. And that's actually really hard for people because that makes us feel vulnerable.
Well, it feels like you can't hide from anything.
Right.
It means that you have to be accountable for actually how you feel on a daily basis,
right.
which is really hard because I think we're all taught to, fake until you make it. Or if you're having a bad day, you can put on your good face, work through it, whatever. And so what you're suggesting, which I've witnessed 100% with Lady, is you have to be accountable and mindful and present, like moment to moment. What a notion.
Sure. Right. Which invites us into doing our own work.
Right.
Because what's going on in you is now an impact in the conversation. How you're presenting yourself, how the energy that's coming out of you is important. Every time we're triggered by something, it changes our frequency, it changes our energy. And we can feel that in people. I say something to you and all of a sudden your posture changes and you start, you shift because it triggered something in you. Horses are reading that. Horses are reading all of that. Okay, so then that's the beautiful part about the relationship with horses is that they invite us into doing our own work. And that's ridiculous that we could be in relationship with this super cool creature that would actually invite us into doing work and it would have a positive impact on the relationship immediately.
When you introduce this idea that Lady and we're going to get into mind, space, and pressure, but as a horse that really communicates through her mind and through space, I had learned over time, especially working with really high adrenaline, high performance horses, that it's like if you can just make yourself like more, it's like when I think about it now, I think of it as small, but it's like, can you just go soft, like just soften your energy, like lower everything, bring everything down so that you're not feeding into like high octane moments, right? And so I brought that mindset to my work with Lady. And I could tell she was just like, where are you?
Right.
Like, I can't feel you. And then when we get into stressful situations, she's like, cool, this is stressful. I don't know what we're doing. We're in a round pen in an indoor arena in Nanaimo. I've just spent 2.5 hours on a ferry. Like, where are we?
Right.
And what are we doing? And you're supposed to be my person and I can barely feel you. So I can imagine for horses, like when you're in those stressful situations, their person is like dim, then that makes them feel alone.
Yes. And when horses feel alone, they get scared.
Well, yeah, because they're herd animals.
Right. Totally. They need to feel you. There's kind of 3 levels to this. But initially what people run into is they run into trying not to be crazy with their energy, over exuberant, throwing their energy around, which will negatively stimulate an animal.
Yeah.
Because now you're this unpredictable feeling. And if they're trying to deal with their environment and this crazy energy on their back, you kind of need to chill.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that's what brings to what you were doing, which is just try to get quiet.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be responsible with what I'm not giving my horse.
And I wanted to look, I want to look calm.
Of course, composed.
To everybody. I want to be like, I'm like calm, confident rider. You're looking at calm, confident riders and you're like, oh, I want to be that.
Yes, totally. So what ends up happening is all your energy goes inside and you're just not saying anything.
Yeah.
Which is maybe better than freaking out and throwing your energy all over the place. but it actually doesn't support a horse. It just doesn't make what's going on worse for them, but you are also leaving them in the best that they can do. So then if some horses can do okay with that, then they'll be fine, but you're not actually in communication now. You're just not saying anything wrong. You
Right.
see, you're not really adding to the conversation.
It's like like you're neutral or
Yeah.
muted. Like you're
Yeah.
kind of,
You're not
Yeah.
freaking out at me,
yeah,
but you're actually not talking. You're
Right.
just sitting there quietly.
Yeah.
Which also could be weird. If you're just sitting there staring at me and not
yeah.
actually
I would
communicating.
find that really strange for a human.
Right. And
But-
for the horses, that's what makes it hard for them because they want to be in communication. They want to have this two-way flow. They are herd animals. And when they're in that flow with the herd, that's when they feel the safest.
Mm.
So that's where this whole idea of space comes in is space is not about keeping horses out of something. Space is about having a positive flow of energy moving from me and they receive it.
Mm.
So just envision when a child is nervous and their mom reaches over and puts their hand on their shoulder
Mhm.
and all of a sudden they just kind of relax, or you're having a stressful day and someone gives you a hug and it just calms you down. That's receiving state.
Mm.
So space is about creating a flow where we could engage and our energy moves to a horse and you feel that they would respond to that and receive you. So horses running over top of us isn't cool, but horses running away from us also isn't cool. So if we're just sending them and they're taking everything that's in their body and just relocating it, this actually isn't getting us anywhere because we could be inspiring them to run in their fear. So now I'm teaching them to run away, which plays into their self-preservation now. So in the middle of that is receiving state. And that's the idea that as I ask my horse to respond to me, I can feel them internally receive it. So we have to get to a place where I can give off energy. And I'm trying to do that now as we communicate. I want you just to feel my words. I want you to feel my heart in what I'm trying to say. And that is part of this, I don't know, deeper authenticity of the heart of this work is that I want to be able to show up in such a way that my horse never has to interpret me. And that's very challenging for humans because when we learn to exist, we don't want to be hurt. We don't want to be judged. We don't want the traumas of our past. So we close up and we protect ourselves.
Yeah.
But that hinders our ability to thrive. And again, I touched on this earlier, but the idea that horses, one of the beautiful things horses help us do is they can help unlock that in us because they read all the signatures that you're giving off. So when horses are pushing in and nipping and biting, they're actually trying to unlock us back into communication.
Yes.
And I don't think that their first thought is, I want this person to thrive. But it bothers them that they can't communicate with you.
Well, and I think they just want us to be present.
Yeah.
And in order to be present, we have to be like aware,
Mhm.
self-aware,
Mhm.
and in order to be self-aware, I think it's really helpful to understand, are we stuck in the future? Are we stuck
Mhm.
in the past? I think like if we have the willingness to transmute frustration into fascination and be like, I wonder what,
Mhm.
like that's what your work and Lady has taught me.
Mm.
Is that like I would get so frustrated, but it was my like inner child. She's brought out my inner child and she's like invited me to do so much like inner child work. She's brought out my ego.
Mm.
She's like invited me to be so much more vulnerable. Like I'm like literally like, it's not like I have no choice, but she's like, hey, if you want to be the rider that I think you can be, if you want to be the horsewoman you want to be, then that means you have to cross the precipice of
Mhm.
vulnerability. And that's like, I think really hard because for a lot of us, like vulnerability is really scary, but the horses, they just invite it. Like they're
Mhm.
just like, hey, if you can be totally present and vulnerable with me, then I'll be totally present and vulnerable with you.
Mhm.
And I think being a horse in the horse world probably is the ultimate state of vulnerability
Sure.
because they're giving themselves to us every day,
Mhm.
or they're being forced to give themselves to us every day.
Could we imagine what that would feel like if you were just demanded and when you didn't do it, it was looked at as disrespectful or disobedient? When every single thing you were physically demanded, you were just supposed to do willingly without any tension. That's really what we're asking of the
Or
horses.
when you said, hey, I'm having a hard time, I'm not sure if I can do this. And someone said, don't be so disobedient.
Don't be disobedient to me.
That's such a, like, it almost, it's like, ooh, it's
Right.
such a hard thing to
Mhm.
to sit with.
Yeah. And that comes down to this very common interpretation of horses is that don't let them get away with stuff. Don't let them be bad.
Don't be a
Don't let
brat.
them be disrespectful. Right.
Yeah.
And there's all
classic.
this tone.
I've had that. Like I've had someone sit across me. Oh yeah, classic mare behavior.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. And then even this idea of like, okay, why does the horse world have when I say the horse world, it's like, it's not meant to be a general statement, but I've heard more people say negative things about mares than they do about geldings. And I remember you talked about it's because mares will often, we've kept them intact. We haven't gelded them, or we haven't done the equivalent of gelding. And they have just more fight in them. And that's what everyone loves about a mare, but only when she's fighting for you. If she's fighting against you, oh, well, then she's disobedient. But what if she's actually saying, what you're asking me is hard for me. Can you help me?
Right.
And then that's this idea. And then it really stuck with me when you said like, and then when a horse comes into our space and wants to be like, hey, I'm not quite sure about this. And we move them away. And then we chase them around a round pen. Then they must feel, oh, I'm definitely alone in this.
Right.
I'm not in relationship. This is a one-way relationship.
Because you're putting them into a guarded state. Because what you're telling them is that they're trying to connect with you. And they're trying to illuminate to you that there needs to be connection. And you use the words vulnerability. And vulnerability is a funny term because we look at vulnerability as like a weakness, or like it's like a fear-based place. But vulnerability comes from authenticity. When we're authentic, then you can be felt.
Yeah.
Okay. And communication comes from that state.
Yeah.
So when you can get to a place where you have the ability to open yourself, we see that from its place of, ooh, I might be seen.
Yeah.
What animals now see is now you can be heard. Okay. And that's a big difference in its state because that's what your horses desire. They want to hear you. They want to feel you. They want to sense you. And when they can see horses, again, being sense-based, when a horse walks into a new environment and there's a calm, strong horse, I talk about Max all the time, and he's such a presence for me, and you got to meet him. Yeah. And I always will put uncertain horses in with him. Young horses, Maverick, Taylor's new prospect, is in there with him. Yeah. And I do that on purpose because I want my kids and my horses to be mentored by depth. I want them to be around depth. And what ends up happening is that he just gives off this sense of calmness. So if you walk into this area, let's say it's a dark room, and you're with someone who's just like kind of got it. They're just solid and calm. Immediately you're going to resonate to that energy. Yeah. And or if the opposite, and they're all of a sudden really nervous, that just spreads. Now think about an animal who exists off those presences and those states, those energies.
Like how they move through the world.
Totally. So then take a human's intention of shrinking. You see, so then they feel our irregularities and our inconsistencies, but then we shrink. So that's actually not a confident state. So vulnerability is the state where all things can feel you. And so the word vulnerability then has this kind of like anxiety to it, because now it's like, oh, now you're going to feel me. You're going to know me. You're going to
what are you going to feel?
Oh,
are you
my
going to
goodness.
like what you feel?
Right. So now that's why vulnerability has this negative. But when you see that vulnerability genuinely grows off authenticity, which is me showing up and being authentic, I'm allowing you to sense everything that's going on. And as we kind of work towards doing our own work, then authenticity is actually a beautiful state where I'm just showing up and allowing you to meet me. But that's actually what horses need. They need to feel your true energy. So the challenge is walking through those states is kind of personal work, because for a lot of us, we don't want anyone to see us. But that's also partly why our horses don't stop leaning in, because they can't feel you then. So there's a deep heart of communication that's based on that.
Well, and for everyone who's listening, I think when people talk about personal work, it can be really like, it's like, okay, what does personal work mean? Like, okay, cool, personal work, like Josh Noëlle, what does that mean? Well, that can be anything, right? That can be like finding presence on a daily basis, like through meditation. That can be like journaling. That can be recognizing an inner child wound. It's like kind of, to me, and I've thought about this a lot, because the work that you offer the world is an invitation to do personal work, but neither you or I are psychologists or clinical counselors. So we're not sitting here going, oh, we'll do this, and then you'll be totally, you will have done the work. It's like so individual for each person. And I guess the way that I've learned, because I've definitely had to do a lot of personal work on myself, even just to be able to embark on this big trip that we're doing and this podcast, is I had to reestablish a relationship with vulnerability. And to me, personal work is like applying the same fascination that we're talking about applying to horses. So transmuting frustration into fascination. It feels like personal work is just applying that same fascination to yourself. Why do I respond that way? Why am I feeling angry? And then identifying the emotions. That's like was such a good start for me was, oh, I noticed that I'm triggered by something that someone said, or I noticed that I'm showing up super defensively, or I noticed that I'm um, hiding or avoiding this conversation. Why?
Mhm.
And it's like that to me is the basis behind the work. And if we apply the same fascination to ourselves, then it's so much easier to apply the fascination to our horses
Mhm.
because it's like a muscle memory. It's like, oh, if I'm just constantly in a curious state of mind, oh, I wonder why I said that.
Mhm.
And we're getting less attached to our state of mind or our emotions that we have on a moment to moment basis. Then we're actually following the horse's leads, which is we're having an emotion and then letting it go.
Mhm.
We're having an emotion, which has been a really hard one for me, is like let go of how you felt a moment ago and just let it, like let it be and release it the way that horses do. It's really inspiring.
Then you're balancing doing what you're asking them to do.
Totally.
And that's what mentorship is truly about. Leadership isn't about making things do things. Leadership is about doing something to such a degree that other things want to be around you.
Okay, wait. You have to say that again.
Leadership's not about making horses do things. It's about being an example. It's about allowing yourself to be something that other things want to be around. And that's the polarity of energy. So when we're existing in a hard state, it actually pushes stuff away. When you start to live in a state where what's going on in you is at peace, it draws stuff to you. That's just the nature of it. When someone is angry and frustrated, and it's not like you're like, oh, I want to be around that person, but when a person is confident and calm and seems to have this way about them that they navigate the world differently, you're like, man, I want to know who is that person? You get drawn to them. And that's just a polarity. And animals are like that too. They want to be around that type of energy. And this is really what, I've been doing this for a while now. And I've just worked with a ton of horses and you just watch. I don't really remember the moment when it really clicked for me that it's like, Josh, if you want your horse to feel safer around you, then you have to be doing what you desire them to do. But if you want your horse's mind to be okay, how's your mind? Like, you just come to the arena and you are buzzing and you want your horse to pay attention. You want your horse to settle their thoughts when your energy is swimming around like a wasp nest with a rock thrown through it. And then, okay, you want your horse to show up and feel safe in your space, but you're all closed off. And then you want your horse to not react to pressure, but you just freaked out about somebody cutting you off in traffic. So it's like, how do you... Energy moves by the way we engage that concept.
Yeah.
And so then that's where the personal work comes, because now it's actually in me to be a model of that. Now, you don't have to be perfect at it. And I feel like a lot of people feel sometimes overpressured by this. It's like, holy smokes, well, I can never work with my horse then, because we make these big absolute adjustments.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's that way at all. What I've recognized with horses is that all they kind of care is that you're trying to do the thing you're trying to ask them to do.
Because we reward the try.
Yeah. Exactly.
So why wouldn't we apply the same concept to ourselves?
Exactly. So as you start to advance in these concepts and you just become mindful of maybe what are you doing? But that a lot of horsemanship is based off of those two pillars. Is this change first the responsibility of me, or is it first the responsibility of my horse? And so a dominance-based style would say the horse has to change. I don't have to change. I'm not going to change. And when the behavior is bad, I'm going to fix that behavior in the horse, but I don't have to show up any different. Which is somewhat appealing.
And very efficient.
Yeah, totally. I don't want to change. I don't want to, because it means we have to start taking responsibility. And that's another big piece that I might have to be responsible for the ways that I have acted in the past or the things that I've done. There's a bit of a process to that. But as soon as I can say that, what's going on within me is a big part of this. And if I can first take responsibility for what's happening within me, then the energy around me changes. And that's now how a horse starts to read your space different. So part of receiving state or getting a horse to engage with space, and that's what Lady was, in my mind, inviting. The first was that she was saying, well, you have to get into the space. You have to be authentic. And you and I have had good conversations around the importance, especially of this trip, of just showing up and just being seen, which seems vulnerable.
Yeah.
But that was the first thing I got from her.
Yeah.
Was this is a part of me that needs to heal. This is where I'm storing a lot of my stuff.
Yeah.
I trust you enough to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then she was also inviting you to get more engaged into a spatial conversation, which primarily was based on authenticity.
Yeah.
Showing up and being yourself. So
it's interesting. And as you're talking, I realize anyone who knows me, anyone listening to this podcast knows, like, I'm a pretty fast walker. And I'm like a pretty busy person. I mean, you need to be in order to do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like just moving around really quickly. And I have gotten feedback. All the beautiful, wonderful people in my life that are really close to me are like, sometimes like, no, I'll just like slow down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like take a second. Your energy is very like, ooh, like this,
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I when I think about how Lady moves in the world, she's like very just quick. Everything's
Mm-hmm.
fast.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's like, and she like pace, she'll pace around me, or she'll push through, or she'll, move, and she's constantly like, okay, what about now? What about now? And I think about it as you're talking, and I'm like, wow, okay, that is the reflective horse.
Mm-hmm.
That is a wonderful thought that Cassandra Olger, who I mentored with, she brought to me my attention, which is horses are just a reflection
Mm-hmm.
of who we are, and you can like go quite deep on that. And Lady, like as you're talking, I'm like, oh, what would it look like? How would she move through the world if I were to slow down? If I were to practice more presence?
Mm-hmm.
If I were to be a little less anxious
Mm-hmm.
about the future? Or what if I were to slow my pace down?
Mm-hmm.
And I should do that as an experiment for the
Mm-hmm.
next couple of weeks. I should
would.
just, what if I were to slow down, not rush around, not drive so fast, not try to get everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
not try to condense so many things into 1 hour? What would that look like for her?
Mm-hmm.
And how would she reflect that back to me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I call it the law of intensity. And it's just the principle base that says if my energy, so if I'm really happy today and you're just a little bit grumpy and we talk for 10 minutes, you will no longer be grumpy because I'm more concentrated in my happy than you are in your grumpy.
Yes.
If it's the other way around and you're super grumpy and I'm just a little bit happy, pretty soon I'll be grumpy. If you hang around critical people, you're going to become critical. If you're hanging around people who are desiring personal growth, it's just going to inevitably wear off on you. So this idea that you become mindful of this. Now, with that mindset, I think that we all have an organ that is our RPM generator.
Yes, totally.
Okay. Now, for most of us, that RPM generator is activated by what's going on inside of our brains at that state or that moment. So you have lots going on, so your RPMs are raising up. But you could actually have a lot going on at a lower RPM if you start considering your RPMs as an organ that isn't just willy-nilly buzzing off. And that's what happens with a lot of these horses. It's like they're just energy all the time. Well, they can control that, but it takes a state of being around somebody who might be doing it as well. So it isn't actually about trying to do less. It's about being conscious of the amount of energy you're putting into anything at any one given moment.
Totally.
So meditation, and I practice this. Stillness is a big deal for me. But stillness is just bringing yourself to the present moment. There's nothing really magical about meditation other than what you're doing is you're no longer running a program. You're not running something from your past. You're just still. You're just here. And it's only in that moment that the brain then doesn't know what to do because it's not grabbing anything. And that's how you can start creating new futures. Like you start creating new mindsets because the brain's like, well, how do I identify with this moment? And you say, well, how about we try it like this? So proactive meditation is finding the stillness. Proactive meditation means while you walk, you're thinking about moving your energy different. But until you become still, you can't create a new future because the brain will always be grabbing subconsciously because you're in the pattern of racing and just going along. Yeah. You'll always be pulling your past forward. So this is the key. So we'll have times where we can sit quietly, but then we get up from that quiet moment and we just go right back to our program.
Absolutely.
So the goal that I want with my horses and in my life would be that I have the capacity to even speak to you in a conscious state, that I'm not just falling back into my old pattern of racing my thoughts around. And, I'm thinking, what does it mean to actually walk in a stiller mindset, to move my reins, to pick my rein up with a mindset of stillness rather than just, I need to make my horse do this. They're not on the right diagonal. They need to be over. So now we're actually training the horse through ideas, but with such an irregular frequency. Now the horse feeds up the line to understand you through the frequency you give, not just the information you're giving.
Of course.
So if you might have lots of good information for me, but if you're just blasting it at me, I'm going to become overwhelmed by the energy, not by the concepts. You see, so horses are concept based, and we often become logically we're dictated by the things we wanted to do, but the communication is created by the connections that we can develop.
Which is why I would say that there's an attachment to like that copy and paste horsemanship, which I call it, which is if you do this, this, and this, then you get this result.
100%.
And I think that's why people get attached to this idea, because they're so outcome based and they're not process based. And I'm totally guilty of being very outcome based. And it makes you like, I've noticed that as you've invited me to slow down the process, it actually becomes like it's almost happening in slow motion. And I don't know if anyone listening has ever felt this way, but like when you're with horses, sometimes you feel like you're catching up. Like you feel like you can't quite get on top of all the things that are happening. And it can be you're either jumping a course, or it can be a dressage test, or it can be just heading out on the trail, or it can be loading a horse in a trailer, like whatever it is. But you're like, everything's happening so quickly. I don't even feel like I don't feel like I'm on top of everything. And I've definitely felt that way in my life. And it's because I feel like I wasn't in the process of it. I was just focused on the outcome. And if I'm focused on the outcome, then I'm not present. Whenever I'm present, then all of a sudden everything goes in slow motion. And it's like I can watch the horse change, and then I can feel the change in me, and then I can feel the change in them. And then it's like this, like it's like an infinity loop, you know, and it comes back and forth. And I think going back to your piece, I just wanted to make a mention about what you said. In meditation, I realized that even if you do 5 minutes of meditation or 10 minutes of meditation, it gets you into this practice of observing your thought. And there's this amazing book, Untethered Soul, which I haven't finished, but the concepts, because I'm the slowest reader of all time, but it's all about observing them. Like, it's like observing the voice inside your mind. You know what I mean? It's like being the grand observer of yourself. And it's such a notion, right? But I, as you were talking about meditation and about observing yourself, I realized that I wonder if meditation, by observing yourself, you can observe the world around you better. It can put you in an observation state right off the bat. And so all of a sudden you're noticing things that you maybe didn't notice because you first started your day by observing your own thoughts and not getting attached to them. So allowing them to let go, or allowing them to move, or just then going like, just, you know, just noticing what it is that comes up. It sort of slows everything down. And that's the part that I feel like is really helpful in horsemanship, because things can happen so quickly. And if you don't feel like you have the tools, then the best tool you do have, though, is observation rather than action.
Lots of things are coming to me. But what you're starting to expand on is the idea of feel. And feel exists when we get into our senses. When we're in our brain is a supercomputer. It is built to calibrate a gazillion things in a second and get it all sorted out so you don't have to think about it. But what happens, because most of us are living in our brains all the time, everything starts happening way faster than anything should be happening in the moment. So that's where we feel like we're trying to calibrate 1,600 things because we're in our heads. And so then our head tries to run our feel. Well, this doesn't actually work, because now you're in your body. But when you can start becoming still, and this is a thing, like meditation is this big concept, and some people love it, and the other people are like, well, I could never do that.
Yeah, totally.
You know, it's just very simple. We've just passed it off. But every time you stop, take a deep breath, and just focus on your breath, that's meditation.
Yeah.
All you're doing is bringing yourself back. So it doesn't matter what way you decide to do that. You just have to start trying to bring yourself back into your body. Because the other thing that happens when you do that, when you bring yourself back, now you can feel. And so you went through in your explanation, so philosophically is how I heard you.
Yeah.
You talked about being aggressively busy.
Yeah.
And then that meditation has allowed you to start feeling like you could feel things around you. And that's what happens. It just brings you to the moment, even through breath, through stillness, through focus. You know, if you just sat there for a second and you took 10 seconds and just focused on your nose, that's meditation, because you're bringing yourself to the moment.
Right.
So it could be a 1 second thing. It could be a 10-second thing. It could be a 5 minute, it doesn't matter.
It could be a body scan. You know,
Totally.
You can do like a 5-minute body scan meditation. And it's just, I'm saying this for you guys listening, because, you know, when I used to, a couple of years ago, when someone said meditation, I went, oh, that's fine. That's not for me though.
Right.
You know, like, or I'm an active person, so I need to do active meditation, which you can do. But this idea that like, oh no, that's, you know, or that's pretentious, or that's, you know, woo woo or whatever, or only monks do meditation. It's like, well, actually meditation is, because what you're saying is if you're more present, then you can acquire more feel. And I would say that everyone listening to this podcast, every person in the horse world wants to be described as a rider with great feel.
Yeah.
Right? Every time, even growing up as a kid, I remember watching and listening to people and people, oh, that rider has such great feel. And you would be like the elusive, it's like rainbows and unicorns. You're like, how do I get that? Like, how do I get more feel? I want to be described as a rider with great feel, but what is feel? So I would love to know your definition of feel. Remember the first time you found that feeling of deep connection with your horse? That moment when you knew that this was more than just a sport, more than just a hobby. It was a partnership. It was a way of life. But then things got complicated. Maybe it started with conflicting advice from trainers, or your own frustration of not making progress at the pace that you wanted. Or maybe you even started feeling afraid of your horse's behavior. Suddenly, that magic feeling, that deep connection, that started to slip away. I've been in your shoes, and I know that feeling. That is why I created NF Plus. I want every horse and rider to experience that profound connection that starts with education and a strong support system. At NF Plus, we are breaking down barriers, bringing you the best training, the most helpful advice, and a community that supports you at every step of your journey. With audio and video lessons on everything from horse care to groundwork to rider psychology, NF Plus is your key to unlocking the true potential of your partnership. It's not just about looking good in the saddle or winning ribbons. It's about rediscovering why you fell in love with horses in the first place. It's about becoming a better horse person, becoming someone who has the tools to achieve the goals and find that feel that all horsemen and horsewomen aspire to have. Whether you're an experienced competitor or just starting out, we have designed NF Plus specifically to support you. Join Noëlle Floyd Plus today and become part of a movement that puts your relationship with your horse at the heart of everything. Because when you ride with understanding and connection, the possibilities are literally endless. Sign up today at noellefloydplus.com. That's Noëlle Floyd, Plus.com. I would love to know your definition of feel.
So what I'll do is back it up just a bit.
Back it up.
By saying feel isn't a thing you acquire, it's a state you exist in. So it's not like, because what we want to do is we want to change nothing about what's going on within us, and then I want to be able to feel my horse. I want to be able to feel what's going on, but it's not just a thing that just drops out of heaven and falls on you and all of a sudden you feel. Feel is a state it's a space you exist in. It's a place you enter. And you enter feel by what's going on within you. The more you engage your senses, the more you're going to feel what's going on around you. The more you slow your mind down, the more you're going to hear what's going on around you. And so then without the capacity to actually bring ourselves to stillness, you can't engage your senses because you're always running a system. And when your body's running a system, it pulls all your energy. So now all your RPMs are running all these old systems, and your brain, which your brain doesn't care if you're happy, if you're sad, it just needs to know how to identify with this moment. So most of us, our brains are fully loaded with self-preservation, trauma, whatever, just trying to get by this moment. Well, that pulls your energy inside of you. So how could you feel anything? So when people say, I can't feel, that is not true. It's that they're not existing in a state where feel is. Feel exists in the space around us. You can feel what's going on inside you, and most of us do, but most of us have unprocessed stuff, so we don't really like how we feel. So that dissociates us from feel even again, because now we know what's going on, but we don't want to feel it. So now we're almost running away from senses. And again, this just invites us to do some of the work. But the idea is that stillness is a beautiful thing because it actually isn't, some people aren't going to be comfortable to kind of like go in and do therapy and do those kind of things. And I get it. It's not always easy.
Or they might not have time or capacity. They're going to prioritize their kids or their marriage or their mortgage or, I get it, people. There's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
If you're a single human and living in, with tons of abundance, then self-work, go and do Vipassana for 2 weeks. But most people are going that sounds lovely, but I don't have capacity for it. But I think there are small things we can do.
And there it is. And that's what it comes down to. Before you halter your horse, stop, take a deep breath. Like it could be that simple.
Yeah.
Get more into the habits of the patterns of what it is to be in a state of feel. When you touch your horse, feel their hair instead of just whacking them, or maybe not even doing anything. Just putting the halter on and marching out. Listen to your horse's breath for a moment. When you pick up your rein, feel the leather in your hands. Like there's ways you can engage feel. And so the more you become mindful of engaging the space, all of a sudden, and you said it in your explanation, all of a sudden I feel this connection. Yeah, because when you enter the space, feel exists, and you will start feeling things. Okay, so it's not a matter of acquiring a skill. Like I am good at feel now. Like I got this skill. The more you enter the space where feel exists, by allowing your senses to expand, by being present, even if you just sat here and you tried to listen to all the things going on around you, you start turning your senses on. Totally. You'll start feeling better. So that's kind of how I think about feel. Is it's not, because I've heard this for years. Some people have feel and some people don't.
Yeah.
And I just entirely disagree.
Which is such a hard statement to hear, because then you immediately think, oh, am I in the category of people who don't have feel?
Right.
Right. Does that mean that I shouldn't, does that mean that I shouldn't be riding, or that I'm like somehow like a burden?
Yeah. Right.
Right. And then you just get in your head. And I can just imagine, like, in those scenarios, you just get smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like, it's just feeding into your insecurity.
Because then all of a sudden, all the things that come up negative that have been said to you, or things you've heard, or things you haven't been able to achieve, now make you feel like you're incompetent.
Yeah, 100%.
And this is again why, like, all of this stuff, these talks, this conversation has what's inspired me to working on my own stillness and doing some of the work, because as you do it, you start to recognize that everything around you changes, because how you're infusing yourself into the world has changed. So now my relationships have changed, and with my wife, my kids, my horses, my dogs. Have I got it all figured out? Shoot, no. But as I become conscious of how I'm showing up in the world, it just starts to change things. And from there, we then add now what is going on inside our horses. And that's kind of the needs-based piece, right? It's like, so I can do my part, and it's not going to all of a sudden magically change your horse because you've done your part. It's going to have a big influence because now I change how I dialogue with you. So if I recognize how I show up in this conversation is my responsibility. So even if you lost it, like you just got really upset, I still have the ability to decide how I respond.
Totally.
And this is a big one in helping horses become calm. So if your horse freaks out and then all of a sudden you freak out, they've now led you into an emotional state of anxiety. But if I've worked at processing this, that you can have the feelings that you desire, and I can also have the feelings I desire.
Yeah.
Now I can breathe my way through responses, and I can take that on rather than giving you the responsibility for how I feel. You see? So could I glean from the good feelings in this conversation? Of course, that's on purpose. But I could also allow you to have your feelings and it not necessarily be in me if I decide that.
That's hard though. Like, that's a practice.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily, I think it's really hard not to tap into the feeling that your horse is having. And I know that even like when we've been working here, it's like, that's not for you.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to really hold yourself accountable for separating yourself from the environment, which I think, again, I think that's a practice. That's not something you can just turn on and off. Like, that's something that you really have to work at.
And you'll achieve it in small doses. And that's the thing I love about this. People love to listen to things and hear things in absolutes. It's like, I've got it or I don't. It's like a light switch. That's not how anything works. Horses don't just change, or we all of a sudden get something. You're going to have days where you're kind of getting it and things are better. And then you're going to have days when you struggle. But it's just about the practice. And that's, we want these solid ends, these end points, But it's really about an evolution of ourselves, that we're just growing. You just continue to deepen your capacity to live inside of a certain practice, and you're going to start responding different. So if we can do our best to start becoming more mindful of what's going on within us, and then we can start thinking about what our horses need. So now I'm trying to show up in a way where I can feel space now. I'm getting a little bit more still. I'm taking consideration for what's happening in me, doing the best I can with that, whatever that looks like.
Yep.
And then our horses have a responsibility as well. And that's us. First of all, we have to understand what their needs are. And that's where we start talking about mind, space, and pressure, because most of the time what we do is we see the work we want to do to achieve something with our horses. I want my horse to do A, B, or C. I want them to lope on the left lead. I want to do a flying change. I want to stop better or whatever. And we think about getting them to do that physically. But that isn't different than what we talked about earlier, which would be me trying to physically move you from A to B.
Yeah.
And so now I'm trying to manipulate you physically to get over there.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that I'm not considering at all the elements of how did that make you feel? What is your energy doing now? How did that deepen our relationship? Yeah. And what's going to happen next time I try to ask you to move when I'm physically pushing you over there? See, we forget that all of those impacts are a massive part of relationship. They're a massive part of communication. So my mind is inspired by what would it mean to understand you, to work with you so you were able to move yourself over there, and I never took your body from you. One of the concepts of relational horsemanship is this idea of being in relationship is that it's not on me to take from you what's yours. You see, I want to work with my horses, and you're experiencing this a little bit as we're working with some of the horses, and we meet their needs, they show up physically.
Totally.
You start to work on energy and shape, and they give their body. They bring their body
so
to
willingly
the table.
too.
It's crazy.
It's really, and that's been really amazing when I'm around your horses. And I was saying this to you the other day, I think people's horses tell you a lot about them. And your horses are so empowered. They're so, and they do hard things. Those horses aren't sitting in a field all day. Those horses are working. Those are working horses. Those horses rodeo. They move cattle. They push cattle. They rope. They have to travel to all sorts of different places. And when I spend time in your horse's presence, they are empowered and confident and calm. And it's been really beautiful to watch some of your horses mentor my horses because that is a powerful thing to observe, is that those horses have done the work and they have this deep, deep depth to them. And my horses are I want that. They're and they just gravitate towards your horses. They're just I want whatever it is that you have, I want it. And so I think that's a tribute to your work is when you're around and the horse isn't just obedient. That's a different feeling when you're around someone's horse and that horse is just
knows the rules.
They're I know the rules and I know they're like a kid in a boarding school, and again, not all boarding schools are rad, but picturing a really strict one, maybe old school, those kids are like tension. They're just don't move and don't, and then what happens is that they live in a state of tension. And I think there's a lot of horses in the horse world that are just I know the rules. So if I just exist within this box, then I'll be safe. But that's why we have issues with ulcers. And that's why we have issues with so much tension, or horses are inverted, unsoundness, because it's tension built up and just manifested and allowed to sort of fester over time because I'm in a box. I can't live relationally. I have to live in sort of a disciplined state because I don't want to be bad.
That's right. What we're trying to do is we're trying to take what should be the gift. So the horse's body showing up is the gift in relationship. So I didn't just go and see my wife and throw her over my shoulder and expect that she would enjoy being my wife. Okay. Not caveman. Okay. Right. So, but yet there's a little bit of our thinking style is strategized around believing that if I can make my horse do what they're supposed to, that they will somehow find joy in the work and they will be okay to do it.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. If you desire, anytime you desire something to physically show up and desire to be there, you must meet an internal need so that they can find it within themselves to show up. So that's why the work in the beginning, I try to front load the work so that I can enjoy the back end.
Right.
Instead of try to push fast through the front end so that I can take the thing I want. So if I can meet my horse's needs, now they want to be around me. They want to. And it's just kind of fun with Max in the arena yesterday. He's hanging out and at Liberty, and then I'll walk away. And then he stands there for a bit. And then he comes back because he kind of wants to, and that's kind of the desire is that when you meet needs and you create a space things feel comfortable in, then they want to be there.
And there's a lot of people listening that are you want to be a horseman or horsewoman that horses want to be around, right? You always notice the ones, you notice the people who horses gravitate to, and you're oh, I want to be that, right? But before we go into that, I wanted, as you said that, there was something that really came up in my mind, which you said you want to front load the work so that you can enjoy the back end.
Mhm.
So it reminds me of a quote that I heard by Gabor Mate recently, which is, if you get the first 3 years of a child's life right,
Right.
then it's kind of not smooth sailing, but you've laid a really strong foundation for that kid to exist really well in the world. If you don't, then you will have to then participate in repair parenting for the rest of their life. And it's so interesting when you think about it that way. And that really reminded me of your work, that if you can get the foundation, if you can lay the foundation right and put in the time and maybe take a little bit more time to front load that relationship, then you're going to enjoy so much in the back end, rather than when we see so much in the horse world, we see a lot of repair horsemanship, which is we're adding and adding and adding to the situation, whether that be equipment, gear, tack, bits, like aids, different types of aids. We're kind of adding on top. We're like layering on top because we're trying to sort of fix a problem whereas if you can like take a couple steps back, that's the kind of one of the biggest messages I've gotten from you is, can you take a couple steps back and then maybe take a little bit more time to lay a foundation or repair and heal, and then the front end or the back end becomes this like just like this good time, like just like a good time.
We have to ask ourselves the question, why is our horse trying to get away? Why do we have to keep holding them in and then they try to get away and we need to increase and we need to increase? Why are they trying to get away? And the reason is, it would be no different than if someone doesn't want to talk to you and they're trying to get away and now you're hanging onto their shirt and now they've figured a way to weasel out of that and now you grab them by the arm. It's like they are trying to get away.
Yeah.
And if they're trying to get away, they don't feel safe here.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing, and this is massive. When a horse is trying to get away and they're worried, now they're tense. And if they're tense, they can't use their bodies because now they're inverted. So relational tensions, and this is the universal concept. Any universal concept will make sense by people, by horses, by dogs, by space. You provide what something needs and it desires to show up. You do not provide what it needs and it wants to get away from you. And this is what makes gear look bad sometimes, is because now we're using gear to contain a body who wants to get away from us. So then it will look horrible. But if you can provide a need, now the body's not trying to get away. Now you can shape the body with the gear. And now all of a sudden there's beauty. Beauty comes when the insides release the outsides. Beauty does not come when you contain the outsides, and everybody feels it. When a horse is not okay in movement, everybody knows. It doesn't even take a horse person to see that it's like, I don't think that horse is really happy.
Yeah.
But when there is a need met, the body is beautiful, and it's not different for people. Our outsides entirely change when our insides are content. When our needs are met, there is beauty that resonates because that is the natural law. You get the insides, the outsides are given.
So let's talk about insides then, because your approach speaks specifically about 3 ways in which horses can communicate, or 3 ways in which horses can communicate their needs, and that is mind, space, and pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit.
So off of what we just said, that if a horse is trying to get away, it means there's not a need met. Horses have to have their needs met. Like, it has to happen. If it's not happening inside of this relationship, they're going to try to escape it. And that's why horses won't want to be with their buddies or, want to run through us. So mind, space, and pressure speaks to the 3 elements, as I have spent time with horses and observed their patterns, that they need clarity in. So mentally, they have to know what's going on in their world. You have to be able to communicate with what's happening with the things they see. So when your horse looks at something and they see something, they need to be able to feel like you can offer them something with what they see. Okay, so there's a lot of training involved in that to kind of understand that, but you have to be able to get to a place where when you ask a question, your horse knows that you're talking to what they're thinking about. So can you get a horse to change their thought? Can your horse see that you see the thing and you can put an energy into it and they can feel how you feel about the thing they see? Because in the horse's world, they look at stuff and they're scared of it. They're genuinely scared of it.
Yeah.
Just because I'm not doesn't mean they're not. And the more I diminish it, the more I distance myself from being able to help them. Because they're like, you just don't get it. You don't understand. And a lot of times horses look at people like we're just imbeciles because we just don't see anything. Okay. Right. So we've got to get to a place where we can settle what's going on inside a horse's mind, that we can direct their thoughts. Like, I can actually connect with an aid, my rein, my leg, a stick,
a flag,
whatever. And that I can see their thought on one thing and then I release that pressure when their thought changes.
Mm.
Because the body of a horse is always trying to go wherever their thoughts are.
Right.
So if you can't direct the thought, you can't actually even develop straightness. And this is a lot of times why we need containment, because the horse's thought's way over there, and now I have to contain the physical body.
Mm.
And so then what happens though is that the mind will always be forcing to the thought. So now you have crookedness constantly.
Right.
Instead of, if you can draw the thought, now the body aligns to the thought.
So give an example of mind horse behavior.
Most of the time we're going to see it as herd boundness.
Okay.
Or when you're riding in your arena, a horse constantly leaning to the gate.
Right.
So your circle is not a circle, it's an egg. They're leaning and they're dropping their shoulders, they're falling in. And then the problem is we try to contain that physical body, but it has nothing to do with the physical body.
Mm.
So we're missing the point now.
And their mind isn't, when I've witnessed ladies' mind tendencies, it's like
Mhm.
she's not even there with me.
No.
Like, if I take her out of the field and her horse buddies are there,
Mhm.
then, her mind is still there. So I
Yep.
can't even, you don't bother doing anything. We need to focus on where her thought is
Right on.
and draw her
Yes.
into being present with
Mhm.
me so that we can actually then start to play.
The two parts to mind is that you have to have, when their mind shows up, something in you has to be appealing to them. So that's where the stillness comes in.
Right.
So if my mind is racing like crazy and I'm stiff and anxious and I'm now a little bothered about them having their mind gone, and then I get them to focus on me and I'm a little pissed. Yeah. You think
Or
they
I'm
want to
tense
stay with
because
you?
you only have a certain amount of time at the
Right.
barn, and you're like, it's amazing how our mind can just
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
go for hole down on something.
So now we're this big ball of tension and anxiety, and you think your horse wants to stay?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden the horse is back over there, and so then we think we need bigger aids to contain the physical body, but really all we're doing is we're trying to imprison the physical body.
Right.
But that's why the horse always tries to squeak out of everything.
Right.
Because they don't want to be there. So now this is where training turns into a more dominance base, because you have to now contain the physical body to get what you want.
Right.
But that's like saying, if I keep my wife locked up in the house, at some point she'll
She
enjoy
just want
it.
to be with me.
Yeah, at some point. Oh, no chance. Especially my wife.
And to be clear, mind, space, and pressure, horses can exercise or demonstrate all three of these
Mhm.
needs at
That's
any
right.
given time. Some will have a predisposition
Mhm.
to mind, space, and pressure,
Mhm.
either one of those two more than the other.
That's
But
correct.
at any given time, horses can converse with you in all three, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's like character traits. People have certain character traits that
Right.
other people don't.
Yeah.
Mind, space, and pressure are the elements, and some are more than others. So we recognize some horses, it's like, man, that horse is, you cannot separate him from another horse without
Right.
him hollering like crazy. And other horses, it's like, oh, I didn't even do anything, and they just don't even mind.
Yeah.
You can separate them anytime. So bringing peace to the mind element is, first of all, gaining the capacity to change a thought
Mhm.
and then be something they desire or feel comfortable with when their thought shows up.
Right.
So that's generally what brings, this is very general, but that's kind of the beginning point of what brings peace to the mind, so that their buddy's hollering, but you're calm.
Okay.
And now it starts to create draw. And the key is with mind is you have to create draw.
Right.
You cannot create containment. Okay. Pressure, horses that are inside of a pressure need, they have to know how to control pressure. Horses have to learn how to control pressure.
Why? Why is that?
Safety.
Mm.
Safety. If a wolf comes out of the trees, they need to control that. So it is innately in horses for thousands of years to get away from pressure, to control it.
And then we created fences and arenas,
Sure.
and we contained them.
Mhm.
So this is why the relational piece is, it's so important for them to be able to control pressure, because we've changed and altered their environment.
Yeah, they can't get away,
Right.
which is why you get kind of negative herd dynamics sometimes, because they're contained. They can't get away from each other. They can't clear each other's space.
Right.
So you can have really dysfunctional herd dynamics sometimes. But also, the biggest struggle with the horse's pressure need is that there is what I call relational pressure or herd pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's predatorial pressure.
Mm.
Now, all of the negatives off of pressure, so there's people that love pressure, that will be happy to use it, and others don't like it at all. And the reason for that is that we're used to seeing people use predatorial pressure. And anytime it's a predatorial pressure, it merely means I'm using I'm using pressure to physically get the horse to do something, often at the expense of how they feel.
We've all seen a lot of that.
We've all seen it. We've all probably done it too.
Yeah, totally.
So if I apply pressure and my horse physically moves, but internally tenses, I'm leaving them in a state of anxiety. So this trails towards more of a predatorial system where the horse is going away in anxiety.
Right.
Okay, so then we're actually teaching them to spook, because you're
Mm.
teaching them to go away from the things that they're worried about in tension.
Whoa.
So then when they spook, it's kind of like you've been inspiring them to respond to their pressures and anxiety. So then they start seeing through that lens.
Yeah.
Relational pressure, whatever, herd pressure, it's this idea that a horse understands that they can control pressure by softening and mentally connecting. The herd wants to be together, and they interact spatially with each other until somebody softens to somebody.
Right.
But that's the communication. So then what I'm trying to do is understand how to interact in my world in a way where I can help them understand how to control pressure. I give them the thing they need by releasing internally, not by physically obeying. Because if it's just physical obedience, how do I know if I've released? So if I say canter, and they canter, but they canter in tension, which leads to being inverted. Okay, so now I've traded how they felt and how they can move for what they physically did. So the lead to this is that now we've released in what they physically did, but we've sacrificed their back. Soon we're sacrificing their soundness.
Yeah.
We're sacrificing how athletic they can be.
Yeah.
Because they're moving in tension. As soon as they tense, they invert. So this is the cool part, super cool part about horses. If you don't meet the needs, you don't get the goods. You can try, but now you need to be in a more dominance-based state because the horse is trying to use their body to take care of their needs.
Yeah.
So if you meet the needs, the horse is like, what do you want to do? There's no tension in the body. Now it's just a matter of shaping, and that's the beautifying of the horse. It's like you're bringing out the empowerment and the brilliance.
Yeah.
Because they're not trying to get away. They're not carrying tension. So helping horses understand how to control pressure by softening and being mentally present. So I will use little pressures, and this is how mind and pressure kind of work together.
Yeah.
I'll apply a little pressure. The horse brings their thought. I take my pressure away. I pick up my reins. I apply a little leg. I feel the horse soften in my hands. I release. Okay. I use energy for motion. I use pressure for release. Again, we don't want to get too far off track. And I know sometimes I can do that.
No, I know. And I love it. I always sit there and go like, wait, slow down.
To stay focused on the needs. Working with the mind, you have to get to a place where they understand to be present. With pressure, you need to teach them how to control pressure by releasing into the conversation. And space is the dynamic of conversation. By space is how a horse reads you. It's like, that's the interaction of the herd. They engage each other. And space with horses, a lot of times we see and we say, oh, that horse is really a jerk, or that horse is really mean. Or if you can understand horses' energy to be about the purity of connection regarding confidence. So if you and I were getting ready to figure out, we're going to go out there and we're going to war. And we're going to talk about a certain thing, and you have way more confidence in it than me. I'm not just going to decide to go and lead myself if I feel like you have a greater confidence in me.
Yeah.
I'm going to follow you.
Yeah.
But if on something else I have a greater confidence, you'd probably follow me.
Yeah.
Because it's life or death.
Yeah.
The herd dynamic for horses is life and death. We just don't get into that primal level anymore because we live in comfy houses and we haven't had it. It has been a very long time since we've been scared.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking scared.
Yeah, like life or death scared.
Yes.
Yeah.
Horses are right on that edge. When they see something in the trees, it brings them right to that edge. So the herd dynamic is a jockeying around of confidence. It's about who's most confident. But because it's life or death, it's so pure. It's like real. So if you are not there, we didn't talk about this. So it's not about emotion or dominance or hierarchy even. It's about who's most confident. So they will always follow, and that can change in the herd dynamic about who's most confident about different things.
So there's you don't think there's a set leader within a herd? Oh, cool.
That hasn't really been observed in kind of the wild horses and some of that you just observe the one that has more confidence because sometimes certain horses have done a thing and are better at it. And the herd will kind of resonate to that.
So the older ones will have more experience. The younger ones will have more physical
around water
ability.
sometimes, or food, or navigating certain passes or whatever. The problem in our herds is our herds are very compressed. So a lot of times the one that's leading is the most bothered one that puts in the most, negative.
Right.
It's not necessarily a leadership quality. It's like what we might see as the
loud
the
person
leader
in the room.
at school, right, is not necessarily the most confident one.
Definitely.
Okay, and Max is a perfect example of that. Like you hardly even see him pin his ears, but he is very much so the leader of that herd. There's times he'll even give up a bucket because he doesn't really. It's not like he doesn't, but he holds a space. Yeah. And every herd he's in, all of a sudden, becomes this kind of way because he prioritizes more of an energy focus rather than I'm going to have everything and I'm going to fight about stuff. So this is a big deal. So when we can start recognizing that space is about releasing the sense of what's in you so the horse can feel how you feel about a moment.
Wait, say it again.
So space is about allowing your horse to feel you so they can feel how
Yeah.
you feel in a moment.
Yes.
Okay, so let's say you walk out of your horse trailer or you unload a horse at a show
Mm-hmm.
and your horse is pretty worried. Okay, and then they'll actually lean into you because they're like, do you see all this?
Yeah.
How are we dealing with this?
Yeah.
And they're going to reach in because they're sense-based. So they gain information from you based on feeling you, not based on you telling them what to do.
Right.
Like just moving their body doesn't make them feel better. It just relocates how they feel.
Have you ever felt stuck with your horse? Maybe they're spooking one minute and unresponsive the next. And instead of your training sessions bringing you closer, they're only adding to the frustration and you both feel depleted or worn out. What if the issue isn't your horse or your technique? What if it's about a deeper need your horse has that's being overlooked? When I first got my mare Lady, she swung back and forth between complete distrust and disassociation of people to highly anxious and sometimes highly aggressive. From day one, Lady was very communicative, clearly wanting me to understand some things about her and her reality, but I didn't know how to interpret what she was trying to tell me until I met Josh Nichol. I had heard about his relational approach to horsemanship, so when I got a lucky last-minute spot in one of his clinics, I jumped at the opportunity. I had to take the ferry over to the clinic with a trailer I borrowed, and I had no idea whether all the effort and stress I was putting in was going to be worth it. Within the first 10 minutes, on the first day of the clinic, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be, and I knew Josh's work was the missing piece I had felt in my own riding for so many years. In Josh Nichol's course, Understanding Your Horse's Needs on NF+, you'll discover 3 fundamental needs that each horse has: mind, space, and pressure. These aren't just labels. They represent the emotional core of your horse's behavior. If your horse feels disconnected, anxious, or even aggressive or unpredictable, it could be that a primary need isn't being met. In his masterclass, Josh teaches you how to recognize which primary need your horse is asking to be met moment to moment. Then, how to meet that need and build a deeper connection based on trust and understanding. I can speak from experience. When your horse feels seen and understood by you because you are addressing their core needs, they transform in front of your eyes. My mare Lady sure has. This course isn't just about training horses. It's about recognizing that your horse, like you, is seeking connection and requires their fundamental needs to be met in order to find connection with you. When you learn to meet them where they are, I promise you, that's where the magic will happen. If you're ready to better understand your horse and get the answers you need, just like I did, and continue to do, head to noellefloydplus.com or download the Noëlle Floyd app on Apple TV, Roku, iOS, and Android, and start learning today. It's such a powerful statement that moving their body doesn't make them feel better. It just relocates the tension, which then reinforces.
But you're not talking to them.
Yeah.
You're talking at them. Now, we could in moments get lucky and it might work once in a while because they might end up settling, but that was something they did inside themselves. It wasn't necessarily because of my presence. So the goal of space is to recognize when a horse reaches for you, it's because they can't feel you.
Yeah.
Or because they're looking for you. This is a privilege. If your horse is leaning into you, it's because they want to talk to you about the environment.
Yeah.
So we need to stop looking at this as disrespect or disobedience and say, good, we're going to have conversation. Because if you just get up and walk away versus you say, Josh, I think we need to talk. See, you're honoring the conversation. You're honoring the relationship by taking the capacity to speak with me about it rather than just leave. So then what does the horse need to feel? If they're right on top of you, then they're not sensing you at some kind of a distance.
Yeah.
So you actually have to get to a place where you can start embodying your own energy. And that's why we need receiving state in our practice pen. At home, you need to be able to create receiving state.
Yeah.
So that might be that you can step into the horse and at a distance, you can feel their hip melt away and you can feel their shoulder melt away. You can feel that when you ask, they're very willing to not just move, but soften. Okay. Softness can be felt through the lead rope.
Yeah.
It can also be felt through the space. You know, when your horse moves off scared or braced or tense
Yeah.
versus when they kind of melt away.
Yeah.
And this is the idea. So receiving state is that the energy within me is received into how my horse feels.
Yes.
So now my presence is changing how they feel.
Yes.
So if you want this at the horse show, it has to happen. We have to find it at home and then test it before we absolutely in different environments.
But that's also building like street credit with your horse too.
100% it is.
Because I feel like we can do all the cool things at home, but if we don't go out and try to do difficult things, then we never build like a sense of resilience or that extra level of trust that when things get tough, oh, you'll be there for me.
That's right.
And that's again like something I've learned through Lady and with you is, okay, we create a really lovely environment for her. And she's like, cool, I'll get into receiver state. I'll soften, we can play. But then it's so important that her and I go out and find challenging situations because that's how I'm going to build. She has been in so many challenging, scary, life-altering situations in her life before we found each other that I believe, and I've like in the work that we've done together, it's like I need to build street credit in all the layers of life with her. If I just put her in a field and bubble wrap her and just go, look, honey, you've like lived a really tough life. Let's just like do nothing. We could do that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But there's this this deep, huge capacity that she has that I can see underneath this like layer of callus that's been built from life. And so if I can put in the work, and it's a lot of work, but if like the way I see it is like if I can put in the work and build street credit and emotional connection with her in all of these different environments, going to different ranches, going to different environments, pushing cattle, going out on trails, whatever, then it's like we actually build a connection that we wouldn't be able to build if we were just in the same place forever. And maybe, and again, like I think everyone's relationship with their horses is different, but I feel so inspired by your work in that you can find the depth and then also do some of the hard things. Because I think there's a lot of narrative in the horse world about let's just take it all off the table. Let's just like do nothing with horses. And again, like I don't think either of us are saying that that's wrong. And if that's your calling and you want to just be present and just have horses in your field and never ride them, like I don't think either of us are saying that's wrong. But I don't think that's the true reality for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I think if we can live relationally and exist relationally with our horses and also feel like a roadmap to going out and doing exciting things, hard things, challenging things, then I feel like that is then the way that your horses exist, the way that I can feel that your horses exist in this world is a byproduct, is a result of living relationally, living in security, and also going out and doing great things. And that's when you meet people in the world that are like to me, the equivalent is when you meet someone in the world that has had a good childhood, or maybe they have like a good family life, but they've also gone out and done cool things and they have these amazing stories and they're just a really interesting person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel like I was like, I want that possibility for people that they can then feel like their horse can be interesting and adventurous and go out and do things, go to the Olympics. Horses can go to the Olympics relationally. Horses can go do and jump meter 60 relationally. It's just how are we asking them to do that?
Really cool. When you look at the culture of the horse world right now, because being in relationship and wanting relationship is something that the population is craving. A lot of people don't necessarily have great relationships, or they've been beat up through life. And then when we say, you can have a relationship with your horse, oh my goodness, that's like answering something deep in our soul.
Yes.
Well, we don't really have the skills to kind of get out there yet. So then what happens is we want to keep this relationship. We want to develop it. It's being encouraged now. So what happens is our world gets small for a bit, and that's not bad. But inside of doing a bit less and regrouping with our horses, we also have to heal. We have to heal, and you have to take the time to do that. So I believe that's what's really encouraged people to kind of make the world smaller, is that it's just so nice to feel like I can just have a regulated relationship.
Yes.
That I can feel good with my horses, and what I wanted with horses is now happening. I just love being around these creatures. We're not fighting. I'm not dominating them. I'm not being encouraged to chase them or, do these things that don't feel right in my soul. So what it's done is it's made this quiet space beautiful, but also trapping. Because now we have a place that the horse understands to be okay, but we haven't developed skill sets around living life together. So it ends up being like, my wife and I are okay if we never leave the living room. But as soon as we talk about anything or have to deal with something, it turns to mess.
Yeah.
So the goal of it is to, inside of that spot, if you feel like you're in this spot, just as a listener, and you sense that I need to back away for a bit and I need to just chill out and I need to get myself re-regulated and I need to regulate my horse, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Because that's necessary. You need to have a base to work off of. It's almost like you and your horse are just deciding you're going to regroup.
Yeah.
So do it.
Yeah.
But then we need to be able to use relational skills in a working way. And without that, then every time we try to leave the property, our horse freaks out. So then we have to go back to our green spot, and so then I like to talk about 4 different stages. Green is where everything's regulated, feels good. And we're just so thankful because the world is fast and hard. And this is a good place. My horse is thinking. Yellow is where everybody feels tested. Red is where my horse's brain is off.
Yeah.
And gold comes after red. So what gold is when you can keep green in yellow, you pass fear and jump to gold.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So what a lot of times people think is if my horse is getting to yellow, I'm almost to red.
Right.
But that's not actually the case because your horse has the capacity to be uncertain and not dysregulated. So the concepts around threshold and about horses, when they're nervous, they can't think. And I totally get this, but resilience is developed by our capacity to go into yellow and use green skills.
Yes.
Rather than expect that because yellow's coming, that means red's coming.
Yeah.
And it could. But the goal of testing and pushing our edges, which is necessary in digestible chunks, is to say, can I go to yellow? What can I do? Where can I go in my own yellow, but keep my green skills? Can you start getting a little bit worried and can you start to breathe? Or do you all of a sudden get scared and need to leave the conversation?
It makes me think of almost like a T-junction. Like you have green and yellow, and then at yellow you have a choice. So you can either go red or gold.
Yeah, totally.
And you have to earn that crossroads. You have to earn that ability to turn into the gold.
And the more we try to dominate the physical body, the more the horse will feel scared and go to red.
Yeah.
The more in yellow our horse can feel that we are doing something within ourselves, that we're trying to do it in our lives, but then we meet their needs, it goes to gold. So now the horse feels, and that's where empowerment comes.
And it also feels like that's the difference between predatory pressure and relational pressure.
Totally.
Is red is predatory pressure and gold is relational pressure.
Totally.
Meaning we can do, because herds in the wild, horses all over the world do hard things all the time.
That's right.
And they have to choose how they're going to meet that moment, just like we have to choose how we're going to meet that moment. And we can't just quit. I think there's very few situations in which horses can just peace out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And in our day, it's domestic horsemanship. And because horses aren't really needed very much, it kind of makes us feel like we can live in a little bubble.
Totally. And it's tempting. That bubble is tempting.
So tempting because it feels okay. It's like for most people, there's so much going on in life and we feel so overloaded that green is like, oh my goodness, I have a place where I can feel settled. And I love that.
Yeah.
Our body desires regulation. Our soul desires liberation and empowerment.
Yes.
Okay. And so then what happens is to get through the crust of the layer of feeling dysregulated in humans for so long, we need green.
Yes.
You need to regroup. You need to get to a place where you can be settled. Then you need skills so that your soul voice can become your guide instead of just needing rest. Okay. And so then rest doesn't illuminate our soul. It doesn't cause us to chase our dreams. It doesn't cause us to feel what I want to do in life. But the more you're regulated, then your soul voice starts to come up. But we need skills for that. And that's where I talk about empowerment with pressure. So I use pressure with my horses a lot, but not from the perspective of trying to make them listen and obey, but to empower them. And I say the same with my kids. I do not keep pressure from them, but I desire to mentor them on how to process the pressures they experience so that they become empowered, so that those pressures don't make them scared and don't make them run away, but they can lean into it. And so then I feel like that's where some of the misconceptions come around pressure, is because we've seen a culture where we want relationship and we surely do not want to dominate our horses or whip them or do the things that we have seen pressure capable of doing.
Yes.
We then throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and say, then pressure's bad because that's what pressure does. But that would be like saying, then I never allow my children to experience pressure because it has a negative impact on how they feel. You see, but that's a short-sighted perspective. So if I can use green principles in yellow, I can empower my horses and my kids to understand how to use good skills to process the world. Okay. And then what happens is if you process the world in yellow differently, you have the ability not to go into that dysregulated state. And that's how you go to gold.
And that's how someone walks around, or that's how a horse walks around. And we can think of even horses at the top level. I think of, as we're talking, I'm thinking of Valegro, a horse that to me, like when you spend time with him in competition, you watch him compete, that horse was super empowered. That horse knew exactly how to handle what you're talking about, is horses knowing how to respond to pressure. And so he went to lots of high level competitions. You know, he competed at the highest level in dressage, but he could tell that he understood that level of pressure.
Right.
And then, of course, dressage is absolutely a dance of pressure and release in its greatest form. And what it reminds me of when you talk about that is that everything can be a wand or a weapon, and that's the truth.
Right.
A piece of paper and a pen can be a wand or a weapon. Pressure can be a wand or a weapon. And we've seen pressure in the horse world weaponized. And I think it does make us scared of it. And there's lots of, I think, examples of that in the human world, that things can be both. And so it's so empowering to think of, or it's so enlightening to think that pressure can be empowering if it is.
It meets needs.
If it meets needs.
That's right. And that's the goal. You and I saw it when we went to move that group of cows, and we had to pass by that house that had the yard where those dogs were pretty aggressively running to that fence. And, you know, we talked about pressure that's not for you.
Yeah.
But for a horse to not react and walk 10 feet away from a fence where dogs are snarling at the gate.
Full predatory pressure right there.
Full predatory pressure.
Yeah.
And not veer off the line.
Yeah.
Okay. This is empowerment.
Yeah.
This is the concept we're after. I want my horses to feel powerful over those dogs, not like I'm the predator now. I want my horse to feel powerful and not to the aggression of a predator, but I want them to feel like, no. And that to me is the war horse. Like the war horse is the horse that has the capacity to look at the world and not feel like a victim anymore. That's my goal. But if you never teach them how to understand how to process pressure, not desensitize to pressure, you do not need your horse lacking sensitivity. No horse finishes if you dull them out. You need the sensitivity. You just have to extract the fear from the sensitivity. Okay, that's meeting needs.
And I could feel as we pass those dogs, it's so interesting because I can actually feel the moment where I could feel Lady feel into me and look to your horses.
Yeah.
It was like, is this a predatory pressure or is this a pressure for me? Is this not a pressure for me? And it's so interesting that when you start to observe those things and then you get to start to choose how you arrive in those situations with your horse. And then it's like so quick, the feedback, like y'all who are listening, like, you know how we get really hooked on the feedback? Like we get hooked on the feedback with social media. We get hooked on the feedback of like before and afters or like kitchen reno shows. You know, humans love feedback because I think it's this wonderful, we're on the right track. It's amazing how slowing down. I know Ray Hunt says if you want to learn something, and I'm going to not say it right, but if you want to learn something really well, like learn it slowly. It's so interesting how by slowing down, it's almost like you get there faster. And it's like, it's a powerful mindset shift. And I think that's like one of the greatest gifts that your work has given me is that you've given me a tool. And I remember I walked away from that Nanaimo clinic being like, I actually, first of all, have a deeper, more authentic, holistic understanding of what feel is. And that it's not this elusive thing that I either have or I don't have. But what I love is that about your work is that it's like a way of being, and it's a way of, it's a mindset. It's not copy and paste. It's not do these 3 exercises and then you will get this outcome. And then, go on to level 2. And then do all this and then you'll be on a level 3. And do all this and you'll be on a level 4. Yeah. And gamifying is like learning is, there's a lot of benefit to it.
Sure.
I think, especially for humans. But because we live with horses, and it's like something I ask people in this podcast is, do you think horses, or do you think equestrianism is a sport, an art, or a way of life? And it's like, well, what if it's all three?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Totally.
And so if we think of, if it's all three, then that means that we can't just do it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be it. But in order to be it, that requires an understanding of how, of
Mm-hmm.
like how to show up.
Right.
And
Well done.
no one, and like that is not something that is mentored.
Yeah.
Or if it is, I haven't seen a lot of evidence of that.
Mhm.
It's like, this is the way of being a horse, like walking through the world, 110% a horse person. I think we touch it,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's why mentorship is so important,
Mm-hmm.
and why I think the masters, it's so much of why we started Equestrian Masterclass was that it's very important that we keep and we understand the mastery that comes from decades of experience, not
Yeah.
just years of experience. And what's so fun about this is that we've just kind of touched the surface
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of this work. Like everything that I'm learning from moving cattle with Lady to understanding the fundamentals of of classical dressage
Mhm.
and biomechanics with Galano. Like I'm so excited to share more of this journey
Mhm.
with our community, because it has completely changed
Mm.
everything about what I do with horses. And I've done horses my
Mhm.
whole life. But it was unbelievable, this piece that was missing. And then as soon as I found it, I was like, oh, there it is.
Mhm. I feel like that's how I fit into the horse world.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of do this, and I never really tried to force my way in. It just kind of was what I do, and it kind of became. It's like we talked last night about just feeling compelled and pulled to something.
Yes.
Um, the art of who I am is about understanding how to meet needs and then how to create beautiful flowing movement, which is why I've been able to kind of find myself in almost every discipline, because people are trying to do certain things, but there's this piece missing in the undercurrent. And that's kind of what I am. I kind of bring clarity to the undercurrent so that then the horses can do the things that people want to do.
Yeah.
So that's been really neat, because I've found myself all over the place. But my goal for people and for horses is I don't know if you remember this, but at the end of the ride, at our second move,
Yeah.
when we went past that acreage,
When he says move, he means cattle move. Cattle move, by the way,
Right.
guys.
On our second move, we then started walking back, and that big white dog came barking at us.
Yes, yeah.
And did you notice what I did
Oh, yeah,
with
you
my
turned
mare?
Raven and you moved
I
that
went
dog.
right at the dog.
Yeah.
And she actually pinned her ears and went to him.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. Not necessarily do we need to pin our ears at stuff, but I want people to feel like
They can say something.
you can have an opinion, you can show up, you can be empowered to not feel like you have to be motivated by anxiety and fear all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what we find with horses and for people. And my goal is to empower the backstory enough that we and our horses can show up and chase our dreams. That's all that I really want. I don't have there's so much beautiful, energetic reward in the liberation of observing people go out there and kick ass.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's really what my goal is.
Yeah.
I desire to be able to give that to horses and to watch their confidence bloom and then see them use their bodies and move how they were supposed to, so they stay sound and they stay empowered, but that they can be brave.
Yeah.
And there's a bravery that comes up in horses.
Mm.
And there's also a bravery that comes in people, but it takes empowerment and knowledge. And I feel like that's kind of my deal. And so I'm so thankful, and I've had so much fun working with you, because I can feel the desire.
Yeah.
But I feel like you didn't have the legs.
Yeah. No.
And it's been so fun to watch how quickly the legs are coming as you're feeling like you can put those pieces together.
Yeah.
And then having the two horses here has just been so balancing for you.
Yeah, it has.
Because it's two different stories.
And I think that's something that the work does that I cannot under emphasize, is that I feel seen by myself first in the work, and my horses feel seen.
Right.
My horses feel seen and understood, and that I don't think relationship can exist without both parties feeling seen.
Yeah.
Feeling seen and understood. And in the work, I feel I have tools. I feel I have a reference to any situation. And I'm not just going to look in a book and go, oh, okay, so in this situation, I do this. Okay, cool. And then I apply it. And because of that, it might take a little bit longer, but the results are profound. I think we should do rapid fire questions now.
Okay.
This is like how I like to wrap up the podcast. All right. If you could read one book to the horse world, what would it be?
One. The Alchemist.
Cool. Good choice. Who is the most iconic horse in history?
Oh my goodness. For me?
Yeah. For you?
Maximus, for sure. Like,
he's
so
pretty
many
iconic.
For me, I know.
Most undervalued skill as a rider?
Energetic awareness and competency.
Who is the greatest horseman in history?
That's a big one.
Yeah, an easy one.
I aspire to anyone in the 10. You and I chatted about this, but 90% of the horsemanship population is dominance motivated by getting the actions, and 10% has always been desiring deeper communication and connection with horses. So I often talk about the 10.
Yeah.
And when I say the 10, I mean those
the 10%.
the 10% of those that are throughout history have always kind of followed that thread. And that's kind of been the people that I have been motivated and look up to.
Who you consider to be
well,
in the 10?
Tom Dorrance for sure was in the 10. Harry Whitney is in the 10. Nuno would be in the 10. You know, the people that are aspiring to deepen their relationships and communication with horses and understand what that means and its brilliance, you know, that their heart is pulled by those factors.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last question is, mares, stallions, or geldings?
For myself?
Yeah.
When I desire growth and commitment, a mare. When I desire power, a stallion. And when I desire success quickly, a gelding. They all carry so many different attributes, and mares are so powerful, and they pull from you to show up.
Yeah.
You know, stallions need your clarity, and they need to feel that you're not taking from them, but allowing them to be expressed.
Yeah.
And geldings just kind of give you grace, you know.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Josh. It means so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.